So now let's talk about why we would choose 1 versus 15 versus 1,000. Because we can choose, right? You can see right on this dial, I can change these numbers. Right? Let's go back to our digital camera for a second, and I'm going to get your question in just a second. I promise to get to it. But let's just remind ourselves on our digital camera how we would change. Right? We're not going to be using these film cameras this semester. We're using the digital camera. So remind yourself, on the Nikon camera, all right, so we want to control the shutter. So we're going to turn our camera on. We're going to put the camera in the M for manual mode. Because remember, if we put the camera in one of the automatic modes like landscape or portrait mode, we don't get to control the shutter. The camera does. So let's put the camera in the M for manual. Make sure we turn it on, right? And as we look through the camera, remember, if we push the shutter release button down halfway, not enough to actually take a picture, just halfway. And then as I look through my camera, oops. Ron, would you grab those lights for me real quick? Just turn them off and turn them back on real quick. Turn this display off for a second. Thank you, Ron. So as I look through my field of view, so as I'm looking through my camera, right, and I'm looking through my field of view, below my field of view, if I've activated my camera, I'm going to see a number on the left. It might be 1,000, it might be 30, it might be 8. That number is the shutter speed, and then next to it there's a number, there's going to be a letter F, and then another number, it might be 5.6, it might be 8, it might be 11. That's the f-stop or aperture. Now let's remind ourselves, if I want to adjust this number, which is the shutter speed, again, how do I do that on this camera? So, as I'm holding the camera, right, I'm holding with my right hand, right here next to where my thumb is, there is a dial that I can turn to the left or to the right. Right? If I turn that dial to the left or to the right, it's going to increase or decrease that shutter speed. Right? I'd like everybody, please, to set their shutter speed. I'll get your question in just a moment. Please, everyone, set your shutter speed at 250. 250. 250. Okay. Question. Okay, I'll look at it in a second. It probably has to do with your It's okay. All right, so everyone please adjust your shutter speed. That's the number on the left to 250. Now, 250. All right, now really quick. Did anyone notice when you were looking at the shutter speed dial on the photo I showed you, or even the shutter speed dial on the film camera there, did anybody notice, by the way, that there were 2 number 2s? That actually it went from 4 to 2 to 1, and then it started counting back up again. 2, 4, 8. I want you to notice, all right, on this Nikon camera, not Canon. Everybody please adjust, if you would, your shutter speed. Again, this is the number on the left. Adjust it to the number 4. Now, when I say 4, everybody look up for just a moment. There are 2 4s. There's a 4 by itself, and then there's a 4 with 2 little quote marks above it. I want you to adjust it to this 4, not to the one with 2 little quote marks next to it. Everybody got it there? No, it's not negative. It's like mega positive, actually. All right, so if I'm using a shutter speed of 4, this one, which is the one I'm more likely to use, how long is the exposure time? 1/4 of a second. What do you think the shutter speed is when I use the 4 with 2 hash marks above it? 25. It's 4 full seconds. So actually, notice how it counts up. So we have, right, our normal shutter speeds are down here, right? So if I were adjusting shutter speeds, I would go 60, 30, 15, 8, 4. Keep in mind, each time you move up, are you increasing or decreasing exposure time? Increasing exposure time. So what you're doing is you're decreasing speed. Shutter speeds increase as you go to larger numbers. But as you go to smaller numbers, the speed of the shutter decreases, which means the exposure time increases. So as you go from shutter speeds of 60 to 30, you're decreasing the speed, but you're increasing exposure time. Eventually, you get to the point where you get to 1. How long is the shutter open when you're using a shutter speed of 1? 1 second. So if I were to keep going up then, now I'm going from 1 to 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 8 seconds. In fact, keep going. Go all the way up until it won't go any farther. So go from 1 second to 2 seconds to 4 seconds. Keep going up. Eventually, you should come to a shutter speed that's not a number. So a letter or a word. All right, and I think what you're finding is you're going to come to a shutter speed that's called bulb. B-U-L-B, kind of like light bulb. That is a shutter speed. And it is the longest shutter speed on the camera. How long is a shutter speed of bulb? Well, I'll show you. This camera has a shutter speed of bulb. This film camera you guys have been playing with. If you look at the dial, one of the shutter speeds on here is a letter. It's the letter B, which is bulb. Let me show you, and I'll let you mess around with this yourself in a moment too. How long is the shutter of bulb open? All right. It's actually a manual shutter speed. If you set it at bulb, if I push the shutter release button down, notice that the shutter opens and it stays open. It's still open, right? And it will stay open as long as I hold the button down until I let go, in which case the shutter closes. How long could I leave the shutter open if I wanted to? Forever, potentially. Certainly, I can leave it open for minutes or hours, for example. Yeah. An example of when you might do this, let's say you want to take a photo of the stars in the night sky. What you can do is if you put your camera, and by the way, to do this, the camera has to be perfectly motionless. So what you're going to have to use, if you use that shutter speed, you're going to have to put the camera on a tripod. So let's imagine I put the camera on a tripod, and then I pointed the camera up at the stars in the night sky. And then I opened up the shutter, and then I left it open for hours. Now remember, as the Earth rotates, the stars in the sky, the stars aren't moving, we're moving, but the stars appear to move, they appear to rotate because the Earth is rotating. So what you would do is if you took a photo of the night sky, you would see in your photograph these streaks where the stars have actually shifted positions over the period of that nighttime. All right. In crime scene photography, we do use the shutter speed of bulb occasionally when we're doing a very specialized technique called painting with light, which we'll talk about later this semester. It's not typically a shutter speed that we use, but it is used in very specialized circumstances. If I were to ask you on the test, and I'm going to, what the longest shutter speed on the camera is, you would say it's what? Bulb. If I were to ask you on the test, the difference between a shutter speed of 2, the 2 by itself, this 2, and then the 2 with the 2 little quotes above it, a shutter speed of 2 has an exposure time of what? 1/2 of a second. This shutter speed, the one with 2 quotation marks, has an exposure time of 2 full seconds.
So you keep the shutter open and just take pictures, snap.
No, you're taking one picture. If you're using a shutter speed of bulb and you push the shutter down and you open it up, you're taking one photo. It's just one really, really long photo. Now, would I want to stand there and hold the shutter down for 2 hours to do this? No. So what you're going to use instead, this cable, for example, is specially designed. If you look at your shutter release button on your film camera, see this one here? Notice that actually there's a screw hole, a bolt hole. Same with this camera. What you do then is you screw this cable release into that hole. This allows me then to set the shutter off. What I can do is I can actually push this, set the shutter off, and then there's a little screw where I can lock it down. So then what it'll do is it'll lock the shutter open. Because when I'm doing painting with light, I actually have the camera mounted on a tripod. I open up the shutter, and then actually, as the photographer, I'm actually going to be moving around out here, shining light on surfaces that I want to illuminate. Being careful not to show up in the photo. We'll talk more about that later. But this is just called a cable shutter release, right? Your digital camera doesn't require one of these. Your digital camera has a setting where you can push the button, it'll open the shutter, and then you have to push it again for it to close. Film cameras would require one of these cable releases. So far, so good.